Imposter in the Barrio. We have to go back. Back before the freeways cut through the heart of the city. Back before the Sky Harbor Airport swallowed up the neighborhoods. The year is 1948. We are in Phoenix, Arizona. Specifically, we are in the southern part of the city. The area they called the Golden Gate Barrio. This wasn't just a spot on a map. This was a living, breathing community. It was a place of dust and heat and family. At the time, Phoenix was a segregated city. South of the railroad tracks, the pavement often ended and the dirt roads began. The people who lived here, the Mexican-American families, the laborers, the bricklayers, the farm workers, they were the backbone of the city. They were tough. They were religious. They looked out for one another. Life happened on the front porch here. You could smell fresh tortillas and roasting chiles in the evening air. You could hear the music of corridos drifting from open windows, but there were shadows here too. Right around the intersection of 16th Street and Jefferson, on one corner, there stood a popular spot. The Golden Door Bar. It was a place where men went to wash away the dust of the cotton fields, or the construction sites with a cold beer. It was loud. It was full of life. But across the street, about 100 yards away, sitting in a vacant, weed-choked lot, was a scar. It was a house. Or the corpse of a house. Months earlier, a fire had raged through it. It didn't burn flat, it just burned black. The roof had caved in. The windows were jagged teeth of glass. The walls were scorched charcoal. Nobody went near it. The older women in the neighborhood, the abuelas, they would cross themselves when they walked past it. They said the air around it felt heavy. One night, late, the bartender at the Golden Door had just turned the key in the lock. The neon sign buzzed and flickered out. A small group of men remained outside. They weren't ready to face the quiet of their homes yet. They stood in a circle, smoking cigarettes, their work boots scuffing the dirt. The summer wind was picking up. That hot, dry Phoenix wind that feels like a hairdryer blowing in your face. It rushed through the tall, dead grass surrounding the burnt house across the street. Shuh! Shuh! The men were laughing, talking about the foreman at the job site, talking about money. And then, silence. A sound cut through the wind. Mew. One man looked up. "You hear a cat?" "Just a stray," another said. "Probably hunting mice in that old ruin." They went back to talking, but the wind shifted again, and the sound came back. Louder this time. Mew. Wah. The men froze. The cigarettes burned down to their fingers, forgotten. That wasn't a cat. The sound changed. It grew deeper. More urgent. It was the distinct, choking sob of a human baby. Wah! It was coming from the darkness. From the black, gaping mouth of the burnt house. "Madre de Dios," one man whispered. "That's a child." "It can't be," another said. "That place is gutted. It's been empty since the fire." Wah! The cry was desperate now. Painful. The men looked at each other. They were fathers. They were uncles. They couldn't walk away. If a baby had been abandoned in there, they had to help. They crossed the street. The gravel crunched loudly under their boots. They waded through the waist-high weeds. The dry grass scratched at their jeans. They reached the porch. The blackened wood groaned under their weight. The smell hit them first. It didn't smell like an old fire anymore. It didn't smell like ash. It smelled like sulfur, like rotten eggs and old copper. They stepped inside. Total darkness. "Light 'em up," one whispered. Click. Click. Their Zippo lighters flared to life. The tiny orange flames struggled against the dark. The shadows danced on the walls that looked like alligator skin from the heat of the fire. They walked slowly. They checked the front room. Nothing but debris. They checked the kitchen. Nothing but a melted stove. Wah! The crying was coming from the very back. The last bedroom. The men moved down the hallway. The floorboards felt soft, like they might give way. They reached the doorframe of the last room. They held their lighters high. The light washed over the room. It was empty. Burnt. Destroyed. Except for one thing. In the far corner, shrouded in shadow, stood a crib. The men stopped breathing. The crib was not burnt. It was not black. It was white. Gleaming white. It looked like it had been carved from ivory. It was polished. Perfect. It sat in the middle of the ashes like a pearl in the mud. The crying stopped. Dead silence. The men slowly approached the crib. Their hearts were hammering against their ribs. They reached the edge. They looked down. There, on a mattress of pure white silk, lay a baby. It was a boy, maybe 6 months old. He wasn't crying anymore. He was looking up at them. He cooed. He gurgled. He kicked his legs in the air, playful and happy. It's a miracle, one man breathed out, his voice shaking. Look at him. He's perfect. Who would leave him here? Another asked, anger rising in his voice. In this hell? One of the men reached out a hand to touch the baby's cheek. Hey there, little one. But his hand stopped in midair. He squinted. The lighter flame flickered. Wait, the man whispered. Look at his hands. The other men leaned in. The baby was waving its hands. But the fingers, they were wrong. They were long. Too long. They had too many joints. They looked like the pale, spindly legs of a tarantula. They were the size of a grown man's fingers, grafted onto a baby's wrist. A cold chill swept through the room, dropping the temperature instantly. Look at his feet, another man hissed. The baby kicked again. The feet were not chubby little baby feet. They were flat, wide, heavy. They looked like slabs of meat. They slapped against the mattress with a wet, heavy thud. The men stepped back. The instinct to run was clawing at their throats. That ain't right, one man stammered. That ain't right at all. And then the baby stopped moving. It went perfectly still. Slowly, very slowly, the baby turned its head. It looked directly at the men. It smiled, but the smile didn't stop at the cheeks. It kept going. It stretched too wide. It split the face. The baby opened its mouth, and inside there were no gums. There were teeth, full, yellow, square. Adult teeth, a mouthful of grown man's teeth, grinding together with a sound like sandpaper on bone. The baby's chest heaved. A deep, rasping sound came from its throat. It began to laugh. Ha ha ha. It wasn't a baby's laugh. It was the laugh of something ancient. Something that had seen empires fall. The creature, the thing in the crib, locked eyes with them. It spoke, and when it spoke, the voice was loud. It vibrated in the men's chests. It said, "You know why?" The silence hung in the air for 2 long seconds. Because I am the devil. The Zippo lighters went out. Darkness consumed them. And then the screaming started. The men turned and scrambled. They didn't run like men. They ran like prey. They tripped over the burnt debris. They slammed into the door frames. They tore their clothes on the jagged wood. They tumbled out of the house, falling into the dirt, scrambling on all fours through the tall grass, gasping for air, their minds unable to process the horror. They didn't stop running until they were deep into the neighborhood, under the streetlights, pounding on doors, waking up the whole barrio. The aftermath: the next morning the sun rose over South Phoenix as if nothing had happened. But the story had spread like wildfire. A group of men, tough men, men who didn't scare easy, refused to speak above a whisper. A large group from the neighborhood went to the house in the daylight. They carried crosses. They carried holy water. They walked through the field. They went into the burnt house. They went to the back room. There was a crib there, but it was a twisted, blackened wreck of metal. It looked like it had been destroyed in the fire months ago. There was no white paint, no silk mattress, and there was no baby. But the footprints of the men were there, circling the crib in the ash. The neighborhood was never the same. The old people of the Golden Gate Barrio, the ones who are still around today, they still talk about it. They say that the devil visited 16th and Jefferson that night. They say that evil is jealous of us. It is jealous of life. They say the devil tries to copy God's creation. He tries to trick us by taking the form of the most innocent thing in the world, a baby. But the old folks say he can never get it quite right. He doesn't understand the details. He gets the geometry wrong. He can mimic the skin, but he messes up the hands. He messes up the feet, and he can never, ever hide the teeth.